Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a graphic nature and in graphic detail and may not be suitable for children under the age of 13. Listener discretion is advised. Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 50. I am Janus Dead. Yes.
I'm Jameson Dead.
We are at episode 50. That's crazy to me.
Incredible. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, man, time has flown by. Really.
Seriously.
It's funny because even though there are 52 weeks in a year, and that the way we say episode 50, it sounds like 2 episodes from now we'd hit our 1 year mark. But because of what we did for Halloween, we're actually ahead of schedule. So our 1 year mark is actually 10 episodes away.
Oh boy.
Which is weird, right?
Yeah.
So we'll be doing something cool for that episode as well. But tonight is episode 50. So we decided to go back to our roots, quote unquote, and do another case from Massachusetts.
There we go. I like it. Okay.
And not only that, this is actually going to be 3 cases from Massachusetts.
What?
Well, the reason is the first episode, the main episode tonight, is a listener request, but it's not a big case. So as I was sitting there putting it together, I was like, okay, I have to do this with other things. And I decided that we're going to do 3 cases from Massachusetts, 2 of them being from roughly the same time period-ish. And then 1 is a moderately famous case here in Mass that has like this really cool twist towards the end.
Oh man, you got me hooked now. Now I want to know.
Yeah. And not just like, it's not a cool twist like M. Night Shyamalan, like you didn't see this coming kind of thing. It's just one of those like, really that could be true. And it's just, I don't know, it's really cool. So we'll see how this plays out.
Nice. Let's get to it.
All right. So here's the teaser.
Oh, yes. I love these.
Okay. So it's March of 1901. And this takes place in an area then known as Cold Brook, Massachusetts.
Okay. All right.
Exactly. I thought the same thing. The village of Cold Brook Springs no longer exists as it was sunk during the making of one of the reservoirs.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. So today, this area is around the towns of Oakham and Barre, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. All right.
And before we go any further, I should say, because I forgot to say it, this is a listener request. So thank you for submitting this. It was an awesome thing because I didn't know about this. And I honestly, having now researched it, think that everyone in Massachusetts should know this story. And it's amazing to me that we all don't.
So you don't know this? Holy crud.
I never heard of it. Never heard of this.
All right. Yeah. This is going to be a good one then.
And some of my family members grew up in Barre.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and somehow I've never heard of this. So 1901. At the time, Boston was the second most important port in the United States, which is crazy to me. I understood that, like, New York was always number 1. I didn't realize that Boston was so important. I always kind of thought not Philadelphia, but, other ports down south. Yeah. The entire state was enjoying an economic upswing after the Industrial Revolution. But that was starting to wane as of 1901, and everyone was starting to feel the economic pressures. And the Naramore family was no different. On March 22nd of that year, Mrs. Naramore had ordered groceries to be delivered from her home. Now, some reports say that her husband had ordered it on his way to work or the previous day, but either way, there's no DoorDash or Amazon, so they had to have requested this delivery like the previous day or so. An employee of the grocery store arrived at their house around 2:45 to deliver the groceries and was met with a locked door and no one answering, which was unusual.
That's not good. Yeah,
that's unusual. He looked in through the window and noticed blood on the floor.
Uh-oh.
Yes. So this is the case of the Naramore Children as recommended to us by one of our listeners named Dawn. So obviously, thank you, Don. This is awesome.
Yes. Love the requests.
Right. And I also, again, I didn't realize how old this case was. Like, this blows my mind. And I think this one deserves to be as famous as Lizzie Borden, and yet somehow it's not. And if you don't know who Lizzie Borden is, she's famous for killing her parents in Massachusetts back in the day. However, She was acquitted, so technically, I guess that's unsolved. Technically.
Yeah, but then it just takes away from all the lovely folklore we have here.
Right. And I'm pretty sure she was guilty. They just couldn't prove it.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I can see that.
So from St. Andrews, New Brunswick, Elizabeth Ann Craig married Frank Naramore in 1890 against the wishes of her family.
Oh, that's a good start.
Right. Of course, they were right, as Elizabeth, known as Lizzie, would find out over the next 10 years. As she gave birth to one child after another, while Frank drank his wages away consistently, all the while being unfaithful and abusive, and the family fell deeper into poverty.
Yeah, he's quite a winner.
Yeah, this guy, when you hear the whole story, we'll talk about all that, but this guy sucks all around, in my opinion. Later described as dependably undependable, Frank earned a fairly good wage at a sawmill in Oakham, although he was often late or absent from work altogether. And his selfish pastimes ensured that there wasn't a lot of money to go around for his family. His family settled into an abandoned farmhouse just outside the village of Coldbrook Springs, near the town of Barry, in around 1897. And for 4 years, the locals saw a proud, hardworking mother struggling to clothe her children and keep her home clean and her family fed. Often, when Frank was paid, he would arrive home late, drunk out of his mind, with no money left. But Lizzie did what she could.
I mean, what can she do?
I know, especially at the times, women didn't have a whole lot of rights, couldn't really do a
Right.
whole lot of anything.
Exactly.
On several occasions, those locals stepped in and spared a few groceries so that she could have something to feed her children with.
Well, good for them for being able to step in and help out.
Exactly. Like, I can't even imagine. I mean, today, like, if my family, obviously, but like if my neighbor, I don't even think I'd know if my neighbor was struggling that way. It's a different world 120 years later.
Yeah.
So Frank and Elizabeth had 6 children. They were
Really?
six,
How?
six, you got me, man. There was 10-year-old Ethel. Then came Walter, Charlie, Chester, and Bessie, with 10-month-old Lena being the baby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so from 10 months to 10 years. Interestingly, though, the gravesite for the 6 children has Lena listed as only 6 months old. But again, we got to go back at the time. There probably wasn't great record keeping, but it is what it is. Now, in March of 1901, Lizzie was pushed to seek further help from the Poor Board of Baldwinville, which is their previous home. So basically, at this point, someone, maybe herself or someone around her, is telling her, contact this group of people that can help you. Now, today we would call it maybe the welfare office, but apparently back then it was called the Poor Board, which is a horrible name.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So a few days later, the overseers came out to the house to inspect the family's living conditions. They found that Lizzie and her 6 children were living in abject squalor with no heating and no food basically in a house that didn't have enough rooms. They agreed to help. The solution they proposed was to remove the 5 older children and place them in 5 foster families.
Ouch.
Yeah, and at the same time, they would be placing Lizzie and the youngest in a poor home, which I can't imagine is better. Like, as I imagine it in my head, I can't imagine it would, like, that kind of thing would be better back then. Like, I'm picturing like a
No.
homeless shelter. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my thought exactly. But back then they must have been absolutely deplorable.
I don't even know. I can't even imagine that. So they left and assured Lizzie, that they would return the following week. A few days later, on March 21st, Frank left for work. Colleagues of his noted that he seemed cheerful, and it seemed that he may have stopped along the way to order the groceries for his wife, potatoes, flowers, so on, from that local store. Either did it that morning or he had done it the day before. It's kind of unclear. So a member of the staff offered to drop off the groceries at his house, which was on his way home. And at approximately 2:45, 3 o'clock, a man named George Thresher stopped by the house to deliver the food. There was no response at his knock at the door. He also found that the door was wedged shut, which was most unusual because he apparently has done this in the past.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very good.
Now, he could also not hear the usual noises of children playing in the house, which is what he would normally hear going to this house. So he went to a small window and he peered inside. He was horrified to see blood splattered everywhere and what appeared to be Lizzie laying on a bed within the house. So he dropped the groceries and he ran back to work and started raising the alarm. Now keep in mind, it's 1901. The best he could have done to be faster might have been what? Smoke signals? You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do? So once he was there, someone was sent to alert Frank at the sawmill. And a party, like a group of people, a party, went back to the house and they managed to break in. And it was quickly apparent an awful, violent crime had taken place, and word was sent to notify the authorities. As the men walked around the few rooms of the house, they saw the two oldest children laid on one bed and the four younger ones in another alongside their mother.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was quickly apparent that all the children were dead. And when the authorities arrived and the process of moving the children began, someone reached out to take baby Lena, who was wrapped in her mother's arms, like away from her, when Lizzie stirred. She was alive,
Shit.
but just barely.
That would scare the crap out of me.
Right? That'd be so crazy. I think I'd have screamed, even as an adult male.
Oh, yeah.
Elizabeth had a deep slash on her throat, which had caused extensive blood loss. Very swiftly, she was taken to a local hotel, because they didn't have a hospital in the area, to receive medical attention. A newspaper from the time reported it as, quote, even though the hour was late, she was treated by physicians, unquote. So I'm guessing, yeah, that's what I mean. I'm guessing at the time, getting a doctor in an emergency was rare. Like, it was so late in the day by the time they got the body or her back to the hotel that getting someone out there to help her was an unusual thing because they literally reported that in the newspaper.
Wow.
So to begin with, the prognosis was not good, and it was feared that they would lose her. Now, her husband was distraught with grief at the loss of his children and the drama surrounding his wife's condition. Would he lose her too? As the night wore on, the doctor hesitantly suggested that she may survive after all, but then came the bombshell. The murders of her children were done by her.
What?
Yeah. During her treatment, a very weak Lizzie had explained that she was overcome with fear that the overseers were going to remove her children, including her baby, and leave her alone in a hostel somewhere, never to see them again. This terror was more than she could bear, and in a moment of irrationality, she decided instead to take their lives and her own.
Holy crap.
Yeah. She described placing them in various rooms of the house and then taking them one at a time to the kitchen, starting with the oldest first, and bashed in their heads with an axe.
Oh God, what a way to go. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Well, keep in mind, back then, I think every family had an axe in their house too. So it wasn't because you had to chop wood for the fireplace or whatever. So
Well, yeah.
it's a quick, easy weapon if you think about it. So, but when she reached the baby, the last one that she killed, she didn't use the axe. She used a club,
Oh,
which I think is worse.
yeah.
Each of the children had evidently received several blows as their heads were terribly bruised and bloodied, and blood was scattered in all directions throughout the rooms. Now, Mrs. Naramore had evidently made preparations for the deed as she, the doors were all locked and barred with sticks of wood, and she had laid the children out on the beds. She even took her own husband's razor and attempted to cut the arteries in her legs, which turned out to be unsuccessful. So she tried to slash her own throat before curling up next to the children on the bed, waiting to die.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
oh
Fucking crazy. How do we not know about this?
Seriously.
I know it's been 120 years, but come on. So the authorities and the local town people were horrified.
Well, yeah, I would be too.
Yeah, they hadn't realized how desperate Lizzie had been. Sorrow was expressed at how the poor children were dreadfully brutalized. Lizzie was arrested and charged with the murder of her eldest child, 9-year-old Ethel. For whatever reason, I think that was the only one she was charged with.
Really?
Which is a little
Why?
weird. Yeah, again, the very few news reports out here. So she pled guilty at her trial in Worcester, Massachusetts, but in a somewhat surprising outcome, the judge found her not guilty by reason of insanity.
You didn't give me enough time to. No, no.
Yep, reason of insanity.
I saw it coming.
So officially, the insanity defense did not become an official thing until 1984. So Elizabeth Naramore could have been found guilty of murder, despite what they may have thought of her mental state at the time. This is unusual that 80 something years before this was officially a thing, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Wow.
Crazy. Now, obviously, some of the next things I'm going to say in the reports that I saw that talked about this, they kind of updated some of the terminology. So certain things that I'm about to say were not the way they said it back in 1901.
Okay.
So it was felt that her postnatal depression following the birth of her youngest child, coupled with the continuing struggle to survive, her husband's poor treatment of the family, and the overwhelming fear of losing her children, had caused Elizabeth to experience a period of extreme irrationality during which she acted completely out of character in the only way her confused mind knew how. Do you see what I mean? Like, that's not something they would have said back then.
Right. No, it makes sense.
I don't even think they understood postnatal depression back in 1901.
No, there was probably some oversimplified explanation for it that didn't make sense.
Hysteria.
Yeah, yeah.
So Elizabeth was sentenced to life in a nearby asylum for treatment, which I know how bad they were in the 1960s and 70s, so I can't even imagine what an asylum was like in 1901.
No way.
Yeah, nope. You're probably better off in a prison.
Probably.
The local villagers were present with Frank Naramore, his brother and brother-in-law, at the funeral service for the 6 Naramore children, which was held in Barry, Mass. The pastor, named Reverend Charles Talmage, having done his homework, accused every one of them for failing Elizabeth and the children in their time of need. How fucked up is that?
What?
Yeah.
That's no.
Yeah. Accused everyone, basically saying it was all their fault. Most likely talking to the father and the family members, but still, really?
Well, I mean, the father was a scumbag, but
yes, but he didn't. He was a shithead, but he didn't need to deal with that.
No, absolutely not. And these people did step up already.
Right. How much are they supposed to do? Yeah.
Right. You can't handhold the entire life, you know?
Yeah. He basically said, had they tried harder and taken a little time, exercised a little more charity, this tragedy could have been avoided. The finger. Okay. Yeah.
Where was he?
Who, the priest? I don't know.
Yeah. Where was he? Why was he in? Why didn't he step up? Where, you know?
And his finger of blame for the results, he said, fell squarely on the husband. So he at least knows, he's at least acknowledging the husband is the most responsible, aside from Elizabeth. So no money was offered for the funeral or burial of the children in Coldbrook Springs. And there were no paupers section in the nearby Riverside Cemetery at Barry. So the children were quietly interred in an unmarked spot outside of the cemetery wall near their entrance gate.
Oh, shit.
It's fucked up, right?
Wow.
Frank Naramore left Coldbrook Springs following his children's deaths and his wife's incarceration. Popular legend has it that he was never heard from again. However, through a descendants genealogy efforts, it was discovered that Frank was probably residing in Worcester, close to where his wife was undergoing treatment, and had remained there for the rest of his life. In 1930, at age 67, Frank is listed at a home at the home of Charles Voller and his family on Congress Street, and the following year lived in 44 Exchange Street in the street directory, kind of recorded working as a carpenter. So he is listed, which is
Okay. All right.
interesting. He did die in 1936 and is buried in an unmarked grave at Hope Cemetery in Worcester. From an obituary, he died alone with no friends or family. So kind of deserved that.
Yeah, I was gonna say he kind of got what he deserved.
Yeah. So after 5 years of being treated, 5 years, Elizabeth Naramore was declared sane and released.
Oh my God, what?
5 years for killing 6 children.
Uh-uh.
I don't care how insane you were at the time. Five
No,
years?
that's absolutely criminal.
Crazy. In 1907, she visited the unmarked graves of her children in Coldbrook Springs and then moved to Boston, where she took positions as a clerk in a department store. From there, she fades into oblivion of time. Like, that's all we know. Like,
Alrighty then.
crazy, right? I just can't get over that.
Now, not that they had any kind of regulation, I'm guessing, but if I were to be able to have that any kind of power at all back then, I wouldn't allow her to see those graves.
I guess it depends on where you fell in the argument of what she did and why she did it and her state of mind. I kind of agree with you, but I also think like years later, she probably had a lot of remorse going on. I don't know. I think I might have let her.
I
I know.
think we differ there, but I,
I know. I
he,
get it. Believe me, I get it. So in 2002, following the efforts of Senator Robert Wetmore, who lives near the cemetery, which sits quietly on Granger Road, Barry Historical Society, Secretary of State William Galvin, and others, a memorial stone was finally dedicated to the children over 100 years after their death. And we will share photos of this on our
wow.
Instagram. Yeah. Galvin donated $4,000 for a piece of Canadian granite, which bears the inscription on one side of the children's names and on the other a brief synopsis of the events which surrounds their death. Like, it's literally like there was one report I looked up, and it was a short newspaper report of the case. That's literally what's on the back side of this tombstone. And like I said, we'll share photos. Crazy.
I mean, better late than never, I guess.
I guess. I mean, again, can you imagine if they hadn't done this? We already don't know this case.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I do plan on making the trip out there. I was going to do it before we recorded this case, but kind of ran out of time and then it started snowing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, this gravesite is guarded by a lone oak tree since their interment, and it's on a lonely crop of indentations near the thing. That was all that remained before they put this memorial there. But now the children are remembered once again, and visitors continue to pause and leave the little ones' toys. Although it is not common knowledge, the horrific deaths of the Naramore children and the reason behind them did not go unnoticed. As a result of this tragedy, many measures and policies were introduced in an attempt to reduce such a terrible event from happening again. Many of those implementations are still in place today, although there have been several more similar cases over time, and it is felt that the number is only a fraction of what it would have been without these measures being put into place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it makes sense. It's mind blowing though. Like,
Yeah. Like, who before this, I'm sure no one was prepared for walking into a situation where a mother killed all of her children like that.
and like it's mind blowing to me because once again I have to take a step back and realize the time period difference. If we saw that today, rushing to somewhere and getting help or getting to an immediate response is much easier. And back
Right.
then, you know, like you said with the doctors had gone home for the night. That doesn't happen now.
Right. And think about it. There were no telephones. So you have to ride a horse,
Yeah,
to wherever you're going to get that doctor, bring them back. So it makes sense that they were like, in late into the night, she received treatment. Now, the question is if they had realized that she had murdered them earlier, would they have even have bothered to get a doctor?
True. Exactly.
I mean, different time today, we have the doctors will fight to save the lives of everybody. I don't know if they have the Hippocratic oath back then, but it's still crazy in my mind.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree.
So yeah, so that is the case of Elizabeth Naramore and the Naramore children, as recommended by one of our amazing listeners. Thank you. That was crazy, by the way. I loved
I
looking that up.
Yeah, that was a great case to hear and to learn about. I mean, like you said, can't believe that never heard it before. I
I know,
love
and it's
being
not that far from us. I mean,
No,
it's
it's not.
literally like a 20-minute ride, 30-minute ride. Like it's crazy.
I
Granted,
love being educated and getting to know new things like this. So
yeah. I mean, I say 20 minutes and 30 minutes. You can cross Massachusetts in like 2 hours. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yep.
So it's not that big. All right. So the next case we're going to do, and I decided to put a bunch of cases together, like I said, because I didn't want this to be a 15, 20-minute episode. I really wanted to make sure we were giving everyone their quote unquote money's worth. Even though I think that case was amazing, I decided to, team it up with some other cases. So this now is the case of Jane Toppan.
Ooh, okay.
I know this one's different, and I had only heard this once before. I don't know how many years ago I'd heard this case, but once I started looking into another case for the time period, I came upon Jane Toppan, and once I really dug in, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this case. So this is a fun one. It's a little weird.
Do we have a teaser for this one, or are we just jumping
No,
right
no,
in?
I'm gonna jump right in.
Oh, okay. All right.
Jane Toppan was born with the name Honora Kelly on March 31st, 1854, in Boston, Mass. She was the daughter of Irish immigrants, which makes sense with the last name Kelly. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Now, her mother, Bridget Kelly, died of tuberculosis when she was very young.
Ooh.
Her father, Peter, was well known as an eccentric and abusive alcoholic whose nickname, the nickname that everyone knew him by, was Kelly the Crack, as in crack pot, not crackhead. That won't happen for like 100 years. In later years, Peter Kelly was said to have sewn his own eyelids closed
Ah,
while working as a tailor. Yeah, I
what?
don't know if I believe that one, but
Yeah.
who
Oh
knows?
God.
Insanity can do a lot of things to people. It's the only way I can come up with why you'd sew your own eyelids shut. So in 1860, only a few years after his wife's death, Kelly surrendered his two youngest children, 8-year-old Delia Josephine and 6-year-old Honora, to the Boston Female Asylum, an orphanage for indigent female children. And he never saw them again.
Oh
Yeah,
my God. Okay.
literally just takes his two youngest and is like, nope, we're putting you in an orphanage. You're on your own.
Just because he didn't want to deal with them, or because he wanted to just
Clearly,
drink, or like what?
who
What?
knows? There's no more information, but considering he's rumored to have sewn his eyelids shut, I'm going to guess the daughters are better off for it. Although, as this case goes, maybe not so much. So documents from the asylum note that Delia and Honora were, quote, rescued from a very miserable home, unquote. Can you imagine? Like you're taking down notes as you're like doing the intake on new patients, or sorry, new orphans rescued from a very miserable home. How bad must it be for them to document it that way?
Seriously.
So
So what does your dad like to do for fun? Well, he likes to sew his eyelids shut.
and drink heavily. So no records exist of their experience during their time in the asylum, but reportedly, Delia, the older of the two, became a sex worker, while a different sister, Nellie, one that wasn't committed to the orphanage, was later committed to an insane asylum. There's
What?
something, yeah, there's something running in this family's blood.
Apparently, holy hell.
Yeah. And we haven't even gotten to what Honora's going to do when she's older.
Ah, okay, now I'm scared.
Yeah, you should be.
Oh God.
So, November of 1862, less than 2 years after being abandoned by her father, Honora was placed as an indentured servant into the
Oh,
home. Yep. Into the home of Mrs. Anne C. Toppin of Lowell, Massachusetts. Though never formally adopted by the Toppins, Honora took on their surname to distance herself from her former family and eventually became known as Jane Toppan. The original Toppan family already had a daughter, Elizabeth, with whom Honora was on good terms. In 1855, Toppan began, Honora Toppan, she began training to be a nurse at Cambridge Hospital. So at this point, she's close to 20. Unlike her early years, where she was described as brilliant and terrible, which is an interesting kind of combination, at the hospital, she was well liked, bright, and friendly, and evoked the nickname Jolly Jane. Again,
Okay.
It's the times. It's the times.
Yeah.
To me, Jolly Jane makes me think of like a Jolly Rancher, but
Okay. Yeah.
it's probably just because I'm a fat kid. So once she became close with her patients, she'd pick out her favorite ones, who were normally the elderly and the very sick. During her residency, Toppin used her patients as guinea pigs in experiments with morphine and atropine.
Holy shit.
Oh, yeah.
What?
She altered their prescribed dosages with the intention of seeing what it did to their nervous systems.
Okay. So my first thought right now off the top of my head is Nurse Ratchet.
I can totally see that. Yes. It's Jolly Jane is Nurse Ratchet. Done. It's an official thing in my mind. She also spent considerable time alone with the patients, making up fake charts, medicating them to drift in and out of consciousness, and even got into their beds with them.
Okay.
All this went unnoticed.
What?
And
how?
I don't know.
I call bullshit.
It's the 1800s. It's not like there are cameras anywhere. So Toppin was recommended for the prestigious Massachusetts General Hospital in 1889. She got to work at one of the
that's
best
just
hospitals.
Twisted.
Yep, because it went unnoticed. Yeah.
What is it with all the people who have like the double lives where, they just get the top of everything?
That's what makes them so effective at what they do.
But it's so fucked.
Agreed. Bundy, Gacy, all those guys, they knew exactly how to play the systems. So while at Massachusetts General, she claimed several more victims before being fired the following year.
What did they fire her for?
It doesn't specify.
Oh, I was hoping it was something like intense that they were going to go back and try to figure out more.
No, not yet. I wish. So she briefly returned to Cambridge, but was soon dismissed from there for administering opiates recklessly. Right? So they caught her. Yeah, they caught her. Now, Toppin then began a career as a private nurse and flourished despite complaints of petty theft. So some people are saying she's stealing their shit, but she's still flourishing in her little career.
Apparently, it's not bad enough or there weren't enough cases that it's going to tarnish her yet.
Yes. Toppin began her poisoning spree in 1895 by killing her landlord, Israel Dunham, and his wife.
Wow.
In 1899, she killed her foster sister, Elizabeth, with a dose of strychnine.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Absolutely no remorse, even for people close to her.
No, she doesn't care.
Wow.
In 1901, Toppin moved in with the elderly Eldon Davis and his family to take care of him after the death of his wife, Maddie, whom Toppin had murdered. Yeah. Within weeks, she killed Davis, his sister Edna, and his two daughters, Minnie and Genevieve. She literally wiped out the whole family.
That's just, oh my God.
So the surviving members of the Davis family, obviously suspicious, ordered a toxicology exam of Minnie, one of the daughters, and that was determined that she had been, poisoned. Local authorities finally assigned police to watch and follow Toppin.
Well, it took you long enough.
Right? A little late for some people.
Just a little bit.
On October 29th, 1901, she was arrested for murder. By 1902, she had confessed to 31 murders.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Soon after the trial, one of William Randolph Hearst's newspapers, the New York Journal, printed what purported to be Toppan's confession to her lawyer, claiming that she had killed more than 31 people and that she wanted the jury to find her sane so that she would eventually have a chance at being released.
What?
I know, backwards, right? She's not even trying to do, well, I was insane, put me in a mental institution.
No, she's like, don't worry about it. I'll be out.
She's like, no, I want you to find me guilty. She must not have thought about the death penalty, or maybe Massachusetts didn't have the death penalty in the early 1900s. But it's crazy to me to think that she thinks she might get out. But then Elizabeth Naramore got out after only 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So Toppin insisted upon her own sanity in court, claiming that she could not be insane if she knew what she was doing and knew that it was wrong. But nonetheless, she was declared insane and she was committed. So the state of Massachusetts was like, fuck you, you crazy bitch.
Yeah, right. You're like, this is what you want. We're gonna give you the opposite.
Yeah, you're an idiot for telling us what you wanted.
Yeah.
So on June 23rd, 1902, in the Barnstable County Courthouse, she was found not guilty by the reason of insanity and committed to life in the Taunton Insane Hospital. An article in the Hoosier State Chronicles, published shortly after her arrest, reported that Toppin would often fondle her victims as they died.
Oh, what?
Yeah. And attempted to see the, quote, inner workings of their souls through their eyes, unquote. Now, under questioning, she did state that she derived a sexual thrill from patients being near death, coming back to life, and then dying again.
Well, that's just a twisted kink.
Yeah, that's fucked up. Now, Toppin is considered to be what, the type of serial killer she's, considered to be is called an angel of mercy. And that's when, a caretaker, takes a dependent, someone that's dependent on her, and they murder them. And usually it's for personal reasons, but that's not so much the case with most of her victims, which is odd in that sense.
So did she do it just because she got off on it, or like?
That's exactly, she said that. That's exactly why she did it.
But I didn't know if that was the entire like.
Well, no, there
MO
were some
for it.
No, there were some that she did for personal gain, like killing her stepsister, her adopted sister, killing the landlord, killing the family. She was kind of hoping to live or get money from them or that kind of thing, live in their home kind of thing. So, I mean, there is some of that, but mostly she did it because she got off on it, which is just so fucked up. Now, she later described her motivation as a paralysis of thought and reason, and basically becoming a strong urge to poison someone, which is just
what?
Yeah, that's how she described it.
Okay.
So Toppin used poison for more than just murder. Reportedly, she poisoned a housekeeper just enough so that she appeared drunk in order for her to steal this woman's job, the housekeeper's job. And that was to get into the house. And basically, she killed that family. That was the Davis family. And she would sometimes even poison herself to evoke sympathy of men who were courting her.
Oh,
so fucked up. Toppin died in the asylum on August 17th, 1938, at the age of 84.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a long time to be in an asylum, and that's a really old age to die in an asylum.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So that is the case of Jane Toppan.
Holy crud.
Although I do want to take a moment to kind of give the full list of her victims, at least the known victims. Israel Dunham was a patient. He died on May 26, 1895 at the age of 83. Lovely Dunham was also a patient, died on September 19th, 1897 at the age of 87. There was Elizabeth Brigham, her foster sister. She died on August 29th, 1899 at the age of 70. Mary McNear was a patient, died on December 28th, 1899 at the age of 70. Florence Calkins was the housekeeper for Elizabeth. She died on January 15th, 1900, at the age of 45. William Ingraham was a patient. He died at the age of 70. Sarah Myra Connors was a patient. She died at the age of 48. Edna Bannister, sister-in-law of Elizabeth, died at 77. Maddie Davis, age 62. Genevieve Gordon died, doesn't have an age, but she died in 1901. Alden Davis, age 64. And Mary, known as Minnie Gibbs, died at the age of 40. So even though she says 30, there aren't that many listed.
Wow.
So it's crazy. Like, it's just scary to think like someone that you hire to take care of you is actually out to kill you. That's
Oh my God, that blows my mind.
Yeah, it's two of the three down for tonight. We got one more. This one's much shorter because there's not a lot of information, but it has this awesome little nugget of information at the end that I was like, I have to include this. We're talking about cases here in Massachusetts, and I would not be doing my state the proper due diligence if I didn't include this case. And I'm curious if you've ever heard of it.
All right, bring it on.
This is the case of the Lady of the Dunes. Do you know this one?
Not from the name alone. I might know it as you get into it.
Okay. So the Lady of the Dunes is a name given to a body that was found on July 26th, 1974 in Provincetown's Race Point Dunes. This case had been Massachusetts's longest unidentified homicide victim until recently, that is.
Oh, okay.
Her killing was gruesome. She died from a crushing blow to the head and was nearly decapitated, and her hands were severed.
Oh my God, what?
Yeah. Authorities believe she was killed several weeks before her body had been found. Now, the Lady of the Dunes was finally identified as Ruth Marie Terry. Ruth's body was identified through investigative genealogy, which combines the use of DNA analysis with traditional genealogy research and historical records to generate investigative leads for unsolved violent crimes. So basically, picture how we caught the Golden State Killer.
Okay. All right.
The case was officially closed after nearly 50 years, as investigators were able to determine that she had been killed by her husband. The Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office had been investigating a man by the name of Guy Moldovan as a person of interest in her killing. Prosecutors had this to say, quote, based on the investigation into the death of Miss Terry, it has been determined that Mr. Moldovan was responsible for her death in 1974, but unfortunately, Moldovan passed away in 2002.
Figures.
Right? Now, the crazy part is this news came as a shock to her biological son, a man by the name of Richard Hanchett, who learned both his mother's identity at the same time that he learned that she was this famous murder victim.
Oh, that's got to be absolutely horrible.
Yeah, can you imagine the thoughts that go through your head in that moment?
No, absolutely not. I don't know if I'd be able to make a clear thought at all.
It's crazy. So the case had taken investigators from Cape Cod to Tennessee to California and to Michigan. So Terry, she was born in Tennessee in 1936, and investigators learned that she had been married several times. According to her marriage certificate, she exchanged vows with Moldovan in Reno, Nevada, using a different name 6 months before her body was found. Does that make sense?
Boy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
So Massachusetts State Police eventually officially identified the late Moldovan as a person of interest in the investigation, and he had given his name as Guy Rockwell Moldovan, born October 27, 1923, although he sometimes went by Raoul Guy Rockwell. It's really bizarre, people with other names.
Yeah, that would throw me for a loop big time.
Yeah, it's like the case with Suzanne Savakis with the father/husband/
Oh
kidnapper.
God, yes, yep.
So Moldovan was previously the focus of an investigation into the brutal killing of his ex-wife and stepdaughter in Seattle in 1960.
What?
Yeah, but he was never charged with their murders. He was a person of interest, but he got the fuck out. Now, news reports, yeah, Yeah, news reports from that time show that after the woman went missing, their human remains were found in the septic tank of that family's
Oh,
home.
oh God.
Fucked up. Now, Moldovan was arrested by the FBI and charged with unlawful flight for not giving testimony in relation to the mutilation of those human remains. He was later found guilty of grand larceny, but he had his sentence suspended after only 15 months in jail.
That's it.
That's it. An obituary does show that Moldovan died in California in 2002 at the age of 78. Now, he wrote a twisted book called, quote, Cooking with Rump Oil, unquote, and published it 2 years after Ruth Terry's murder.
What
Yep.
the fuck?
Oh, it's even weirder. One of its so-called recipes was titled Cape Cod Shid.
Oh God.
Yeah, it had really eerie similarities to the crime itself.
Ew.
So on the page where this recipe is, Moldovan drew a creature with long flowing hair and wrote in part, quote, after the shid is caught, everything over 5 minutes ends it. The sweet turpentine taste will turn to that of a burnt glove, and the tender look will become one of despair, unquote.
Okay. What the hell are you supposed to think if you are the person reading this?
You're trying to
Like,
make something and you're like, what the
yeah,
fuck? Yeah.
yeah. Like, no.
So retired FBI profiler Julia Cowley, who worked on the Golden State Killer case, analyzed the book and the supposed recipe. She said, quote, what I do wonder, especially the last line, the tender look will become one of despair. You have to think that perhaps was the moment he watched the life go out of her eyes when she realized he's going to kill me. It's really horrifying, unquote.
Yeah, that's ridiculously dark.
It's fucked up. Like, I'm going to kill someone and then I'm going to talk about it in this sick recipe book. What? So, one last interesting note. This is my favorite part of the whole case. There is a theory that the Lady of the Dunes, Ruth Terry, might have accidentally been in the original Jaws movie.
I'm sorry, what now?
Yeah. So, Jaws was filmed on Martha's Vineyard, which isn't too far from Provincetown, all things
Right.
considered.
Yep.
There are a number of extras seen walking about in the background of the movie, and one of the extras seen walking around looks an awful lot like Ruth Terry. Now, the Lady of the Dunes was found soon after these scenes were filmed. No one working on the film that has been part of the discussion about this can identify this particular woman in the movie. Like, no one knows who she is. So they think that maybe while she was traveling, they were traveling through Massachusetts. She ended up as a background extra on this massively famous movie, then later killed and left her body being left in Provincetown.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
It's fucked up. And now it's unconfirmed, but it is fucking creepy as hell. I don't remember which version of it is. I used to own Jaws on DVD and I watched all the bonus features. And that's where I first discovered the story of this crazy kid, like, the Lady of the Dunes, and how everyone thinks it might be this woman in the background. So it is a bonus feature on one version of Jaws, either on Blu-ray or DVD. I can't remember. So anyone who owns it, go check out your bonus features, because you can find this very thing that I'm talking about, where I got this little last nugget of information. And that is the case of the Lady of the Dunes.
Wow. That is awesome.
Yeah, so that's what I said when I was looking into the Naramore Children case, and it just wasn't long enough to fill an episode. I was like, I'm going to throw in 2 other Massachusetts cases, because why not? And that, I think they all fit perfectly. So
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us. We will be back. We have a lot of things coming up for you in the next month or so. Jameson's got another case cooking up that he's going to present.
I got one brewing. You guys better be ready.
We've got something very special for Joyous Dead that we're going to be doing, which, maybe next week, maybe not. We'll see how that goes. And we have some other cool things coming your way. We have a whole bunch of ideas that go through our heads. So for the next 4 weeks or so, we've got quite a bit coming at you. So definitely join us next week. With that said, I am Janus Dead,
I'm Jameson dead.
and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.